Hi, I'm Linda Fox from PhocusWire, and I'm in the studio with John Matson from Propellic and with Carlo Mistro from Stiplo. Did I say that correctly?
Absolutely, correct.
Okay, great, welcome.
Nailed
Thanks
it.
for joining us. All right, so we're going to talk about AI visibility, and you're both going to we're probably going to agree on some issues and maybe disagree on others because you look at different sectors. But let's just start with give me an overview. I'll start with you, John.
Okay.
Where are we with AI visibility? There seems to be quite a lot of, I say snake oil out there. That might be unfair to some people, but there seem to be, the people are saying that they can crack AI visibility, always want to sell you something. Just give me your perspective.
And do you mean from a tracking perspective, or do you mean like broadly,
Broadly, showing up, measuring, acting on?
Yeah, I mean, it really, I think from a tracking perspective, there's definitely a lot of snake oil salesmen out there, but I think it's getting closer, but it's still so nascent as a category for us to really honestly say, oh, this tracking's empirically good. There are specific tools that we lean on because we agree with the methodologies and that the basic principles of SEO that are being applied in GEO. But I think it's still a nascent category for what true north looks like or tracking looks like. But from a execution perspective and what companies can do to associate their brands and with the entities and affinities that they want to be associated with, I think those are very realistic things that can be done now. And we do have evidence that we're able to do statistically relevant measurement of to say, yes, we've moved the needle for you in this category for this type of prompt. So I think it's getting closer and closer, and it really also depends on what your goals are.
Yes,
what kind of company you are. DMO is going to be very different than what a hotel is tracking. A tour operator is much more driven by, how are we going to get this across a broader consideration window. But anyway, that's probably a point.
Good answer. So you're working with hotels specifically.
Correct.
How much knowledge are they coming to you with? Are they lost? Are they, how are you
There's usually, anecdotally, there is a request from the GM or the hotel owner saying, I just tried on ChatGPT and my hotel doesn't pop up. So how do we do it? How do we fix it? And I think there is quite a bit of misunderstanding of what exactly drives the visibility. You're totally right, there is a lot of snake oil, but the reality is that it's we are at a point like SEO was 15 to 20 years ago where nobody really knows what really drives it. And even if it changes constantly.
Right.
And then it depends, are you on OpenAI, Anthropic, Google, and there's different answers. But what is true, and I've seen it firsthand, is that the number of visitors to hotel website referred from ChatGPT or Claude is growing exponentially. At the beginning of 2025, it was in the single percentage digit. Now it's getting probably 5 to 8x what it was a year before. So it's still from a smaller base, but it's growing faster. And conversion is also higher because the people arriving have already effectively done research. So they're better qualified.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah.
No,
I was just going to say, it's so interesting that we just did a talk earlier today, and we polled the room and said, hey, who here has a strategy towards AI visibility? And 2 people's hands raised, which was surprising to us. But then we said, okay, well, who in this room has researched a trip for themselves personally using a large language model? Every single hand in that room. So I think its usage is not, I think, in question. And Phocuswright's stats here are great for seeing the leap in from, I think it was 33% to 52% in a year. 52, so it's definitely in use. It's just whether or not it's driving that direct at last click into the conversion.
Did you delve at all into the 2 that said they had a strategy as to what level of strategy they had?
We didn't at that session. It was a bigger session, but that's what they're coming to us for. A lot of the time is this, hey, here's the strategy for the key audiences and the types of personas, what types of customizations they would see in their personalized large language model and how to optimize for that. So that's where we have to kind of carve it out for them. And it's a new frontier. We just have to use it off of best principles for before. I could geek out on why SEO is still impacting GEO, but I'm sure you have other questions.
I've just seen something saying SEO is not dead and why we shouldn't consider it as dead. And okay, you just mentioned that the different large language models all have, slightly different flavors.
Correct.
And then of course they update and then that changes again. How much, and you can chime in on this one as well, how much has what hotels can do and how they react changed even in the last 6 months?
Absolutely. And I think here there is a massive component of AI visibility, still SEO, but it really depends on also which LLM you're using, because ChatGPT, which is funded originally from Microsoft, has apparently a much bigger skew towards Bing, whereas if you're using Gemini, which is clearly owned by Google, there is much more connection between your ranking in Google and the ranking in Gemini. But everything is moving very fast. The question about what hotels can do, there's probably 3 key things. One is start monitoring. There is tools out there that can help you, but simply as just like go on ChatGPT and ask the question. What will your guest actually type in ChatGPT, and what does ChatGPT?
So know your prompts kind of thing.
It's not a statistical answer. If you want to get, you should use a tool to do it. But even simply like just trying yourself, it's already give you a sense. The second is there is some basics that hotels and other operators within travel should get right. There is a bit of technical, again, we can get more detail, but there is some technical items that they should be crossed off. And third is having a plan, because there is probably like hundreds of different small things you need to do. You need probably support from people that have done it before, or tools that can actually prioritize what has the biggest impact today. Because as we know, hotels are, the teams are super stretched. Probably the same person is doing GO, is the same person is doing SEO, and is doing CRM, and maybe also paid media. Right? It's very difficult to do all together.
I mean, that's what we're hearing. We're hearing, we know we have to react, we know we have to have a plan, but we just don't have the resources, and that's time. And if you're maybe 1 or 2 hotels in a small group, or just even an independent, where do you start?
Absolutely.
And that roadmap is it's something that's so important to define, to your point. Like, what is the roadmap for the key things that you can do and the small changes you can make that have the highest impact? So like those low lift, high impact kind of optimizations, what passages should be there. They call it content chunking, right? Like where, what does the recipe look like for reaching that particular type of traveler?
How similar is that to what we would have called landing pages before? How similar is that sort of theory and practice?
Yeah, so it's basically, I love this analogy. It's not a travel analogy, but it's a really good one, which is, how recipe, you used to look up like pancakes, best like pancake recipe. And it's like this long, like kind of scrolled thing. Be like, my grandmother makes the best pancakes and this recipe was passed down by her grandmother. Anyway, that is actually negatively impacting them. That's like any other landing page for a travel company would like having this long list of things that is kind of harder for the large language model to ingest is the challenge. So the shift is, and I think this was your question, right? Which is like what's changed or what could be changed?
Yeah, or could even change again in a month's time.
Yeah, I think the one thing that feels very certain is like only the tokenization and available amount of information. And so where we were trying to align a keyword to a certain brand or a certain action or unbranded keyword, we're now like looking at those as entities, and we're creating only within a window of a certain amount of content, a shorter amount. So, this many eggs in pancakes would be like a much better thing for getting your recipe indexed in that large language model. Okay. And then finding that in other places on the internet. This is why DMOs have this new role that they can play actually in supporting the businesses in their destination. They can create co-occurrence, which is similar to what backlinks looked like. And so they can say, this is the best trekking in Nepal, and basically reference the tour operators or the specific hotels that they might want to be considering, and help those businesses by being a source rather than a backlink. And that just referencing the same strategy around co-occurrence has big implications and benefit to ranking we've been finding. So it's similar strategies to SEO, just a different execution.
So you mentioned systems and working with partners there. So what are the ingredients of a good partner when it comes to AI visibility? Because because again, there's a lot of, every week it seems like another company has said, okay, we now do AI visibility. And so is it the same principle as you would always have used in working and approaching a tech partner, or are there other things? What are the ingredients?
So I think there is definitely like a base layer of data. You know, you need to have a good provider of data that can look at through various models, providers. They can create the right queries, because one of the difference between the way users ask questions to Google versus the way they do it to ChatGPT. Google used to be Barcelona Hotel City Center.
Yeah.
Now it becomes, I'm flying in Barcelona for Phocuswright. I would like to be close to the venue. And it becomes much longer, much more complex. So if you use a traditional the SEO question into your booking engine, you don't really get the right answer. The second thing, also what we've seen firsthand at Stiplo, is using the right model, because I still think 80+% of users of ChatGPT, they're using the free model.
Yes.
And so what you really want to check is what the free model of OpenAI is currently answered versus the paid model, because the answers are completely different. Is it web search enabled? If web search is not enabled, you're getting answer updated to probably like January 26, if not summer 25. So depending a bit on what the user is using, you need to make sure that you're monitoring that. So this is, I think, super important. The second part that you're mentioning is then in terms of actions. Here is where I think making sure that you're working with a platform that understands hospitality, understands hotels, because hospitality is quite unique. It's complex, is based on a very messy tech stack, and therefore, if you go work with somebody that the bread and butter is e-commerce, it's probably not going to be able to help you specifically as an hospitality provider. So going with a specialized firm, I think that's what I recommend.
I do too.
It's interesting you mentioned the tech stack, because we just did a piece on, where companies are going to have to either completely address the tech stack, which of course is a big undertaking, or, targeted. So what's your view? Can both work? I mean,
I'm very pragmatic. I've been in travel for almost 20 years. When I started, everybody was talking about data is a mess and we need a single customer view. 20 years later, it's still the same point. I just think you need to be able to get innovation to work within the constraints that you have in your data. There's always the ambition of getting better and cleaner data, but the reality is, I think it's going to be difficult to really get to that point unless you take very extreme measures, or like getting out all your messy setup and go for one single provider. So I think the pragmatic approach, where you optimize and focus on what really matters for the customer, I think that's where you win. And you can do it on AI visibility and AI conversion as well.
So, there's lots of discussion around who wins, direct versus OTA. Is AI a leveler? Do you see it as a leveler, or is it deep pockets?
I'm bullish on supplier in this era, mainly for a few different reasons. Around AI visibility specifically, I think that one, they create new products, net new. They have also kind of the ultimate weapon here, which is ground truth experience.
Yeah.
So physical, touch with this. And so they can create new products off of things that are physically in the world. And they have first party relationships, first party data with those customers kind of no matter what. And so I think it's not necessarily a full leveler from my perspective with the intermediary market. I think it just plays a different role. I think we're seeing that in the big, even with Booking.com and Expedia's most recent kind of shifts into more investments in B2B.
Yep.
I think they're just hedging their bets more over seeing the writing on the wall that their role will change in terms of brand affinity and kind of being more of a probably fulfillment layer. I think that they're probably going to create and service AI solutions more and more into their supplier markets and be a fulfillment layer. Because a large language model, I don't think is going to get into the flow as the same way.
Customer care.
There's no benefit to them to getting fully
just
transactional.
like Google didn't ever, because it doesn't make sense for them. So
that's right, and that's who we're playing with in the same. We're in the same stratosphere.
Yeah. So what happens to does the whole discussion around who owns the customer, does that evolve with AI?
Well, there's definitely more to play for. It's very interesting, and I totally agree with John that the LLMs, OpenAI about a year ago seemed to be very keen to get into actually completing the booking journey. And then very quickly probably they spun up a team and they realized what they were getting into, and then they backtracked 3 months later. Same question why Google never really went into that space. So I think there is still an opportunity for independents or hotel groups and other players within travel to get a bigger role and get back quite a bit of ownership of the client. Because what is happening that is super interesting is that today LLMs are still preferring and recommending the providers versus the OTA. And one of the reasons is probably because the content that the LLM need is much better if it's provided by the hotel themselves or the travel provider, whereas the OTA maximize for simplicity and clarity, which is often not what really drives the LLM. And therefore, there is this opportunity for now hotel operator to really capture this customer back. However, there is probably just a matter of 18 months before the OTA will figure out how to make sure that they are the ones appearing. So I think it's very important that independents and hotels and travel operators capture it today.
Because for example, OTAs, they can and do spin up pages according to a campaign or a destination or whatever it happens to be really quickly, and don't they have a massive advantage in the fact that their data is structured? Does that not play very much to their strengths?
Definitely, the structuring of the data is one of the key areas where OTAs do very well. However, that's why I was mentioning earlier, the change in the queries that the guest introduces into the booking engine, in the LLM, is what actually changes the information needed to get back. Because somebody I want a boutique hotel, I want need a near good seafood restaurants. This is kind of information that today are not yet structured into the OTAs, but they may live into our hotel is in a vibrant neighborhood near the fish market, etc., etc. And that's why apparently the hotels are jumping out more than the OTAs. However, again, there is these 18 months where the systems are still being defined, understanding, and therefore, Booking.com and Expedia have massive teams of very smart people trying to fix this issue.
And there's really also some very practical stuff that's happening that gives them that advantage too. The fact that one, they're the domain authority within their own hotel. So if you're actually giving any questions about it, you're going to be referencing the actual hotel's information. The LLM is going to trust that more. Just like they would trust a .gov or .org more about the destination or something. And then, but even more specifically, OTAs have this kind of at least in AI mode, this is a good example, that your Google business profile, you can't have a Google business profile of a hotel that helps support the results for an OTA's result within that. But they can pull up a hotel website more effectively. And so, hotels should be, in this great example, indexing their or optimizing their Google business profiles, because that helps so much with that top funnel, or I should say that kind of bottom funnel search intent.
So just because you mentioned hotel websites there, beginning to hear about websites becoming obsolete. So how far have you looked at that or delved into it, and how quickly is that, what's going to move the needle there? What needs to happen?
Everything we just said kind of depends on a website. So I think it's maybe the opposite. However, there's a lot of things to explore around, MCPs and UCP and all these things but inevitably those all depend on us moving the transaction into the LLM and an understanding of what that would look like. I think today, Amadeus just announced that they're doing a whole new agentic platform. They think they announced that at High Tech, and I think everybody's going to get into this in different capacities, and kind of it's going to get shaped by the players already inevitably. But yeah, I think all of the I don't need a website is kind of depending on this domain that it doesn't quite exist yet. It's a futurist view.
There has to be some depository somewhere, doesn't there?
Absolutely. Yes. And I think today what is happening is your website doesn't have only your guest as the audience. You have also the AI, the audience. So take the point about is the website still relevant? I think the website, if anything, is even more relevant, because it's the way you communicate with AI, the way the LLMs are trained, the way actually your information get out there. don't disagree, maybe in 20 years' time you don't need it because you have a schema somewhere in the net and that delivers. But then the reality is that today is needed. And the last thing is that users are, they know how to book an hotel with like a calendar selector, number of beds, etc.
Yeah.
All the tests, I remember 18 months ago, everybody was chat interface to book an hotel. Where did it go? I tried it a number of times. It's just like not the right experience. So
it will be hard to shift the behavior or what we've learned over the
behaviors are extremely slow to shift. It's going to take long time, and you're going to have different cohort of users that get used to booking a new way. And what I think is like, website or OTAs are extremely optimized for conversion. So you may discover like your guests spend 80%, 90% of the journey from dreaming, discovery, etc. on LLMs. But then the last 10%, for the time being, is still probably like on a website.
And it's well said. Like even if the interface for us changes, the surface changes. That say we fully go into a new wearable format, and we're just talking to LLMs. Many more people are starting to talk to Claude and ChatGPT, and say that ChatGPT and their acquisition of Johnny Ive's company ends up being like a new wearable that goes away. No matter what, it's still going to go, to your point, that robot's going to go look at a website, to some repository.
Yeah, repository. So. Okay. Best advice for a small DMO who's out there thinking, it's got smart people on board, but just really doesn't know where to start. And I'll come to you for a hotel.
A small DMO, not sure where to start. I would look at how your current content is structured, and I would think deeply about the partnerships of the organizations within your destination that you can support. So I don't think you'd have to have massive spend to optimize for large language models.
Because that's symbiotic, isn't it?
Exactly.
Yeah.
That is like a very virtuous cycle.
Yeah.
And I think DMOs can actually have a new kind of success metric for what driving tourism to their destination looks like. And I don't think that has to look like high traffic volumes or even like click-through or engagement. It can be source to these other businesses. So that's something I would look at. And it's really about structuring and optimizing the content on your website.
Carlo, same question for an independent hotel.
Absolutely. So we already discussed about check your visibility, but then the second part is check the reliability of the data you have on your website.
Okay.
Very often, hotel websites are left a bit
out of date,
on the side. Out of date.
FAQs not up.
Out of date promotions. Are you still selling your Easter promotion in May? Do you have the restaurant? The swimming pool is going to open in October.
Okay.
There's a lot of information that is wrong. And what a human sometimes manages to avoid confusion. LLMs are very literal.
Need to be told. Yeah.
We got one of our clients changed the name of one of their main properties because they were opening another property in the same city. And they did a very good job on the website, but then all the metadata stayed the same. And that from one day to the other, they completely disappeared from the LLMs because apparently there was the hotel that the LLM was trying to find was not the hotel the website was declaring, and they just disappeared. So
I hate conflicting information.
That's a really interesting point, actually. I was going to wrap up the conversation, but that is a really interesting point because hotels change their flag all the time.
Correct.
And if you're a part of a more sort of a marketing consortium like a Best Western as opposed to a Hilton or even one of their brands, you've become an IHG. I mean, that's going to be
and it's not difficult to declare it. You can effectively convey the change in brand to the LLMs, but the problem is that people need a bit of understanding. Everything is new. For example, for SEO, now people know how to do it. You do redirects, and it's kind of standard. For a GEO and AI, very few people think about it.
Yeah.
And this customer of ours just disappeared.
Yeah.
And that's why they came to us and say, hey, what happened to my hotel?
That's going to be interesting going forward. Carlo, John, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Linda.
Appreciate it.
Thanks.